Good afternoon. I hope you got some good lunch and a little time to catch up on your emails and ready to kind of rev it up again. So I wanted to introduce you to our next session. This will be fun because it's a little bit more of a workshop, so we're going to use our brains. We're going to listen, we're going to use our brains. Chris Penn is with Shift Communications, and he's going to talk about social media. He's a terrific guy. He's a good friend of MITX, and I'm thrilled to have him here today.
All right, thank you very much. Question, do you actually need me to use the microphone? Are you guys okay in the back row? Would you prefer that I use the mic? Okay. Otherwise, we can have our amplified. Is that better? Okay, that's better. All right, good afternoon. Let's turn on the clock here. Today we're talking about social media analysis, and what we're going to cover in today's workshop is not more things looking at just like Twitter followers and stuff like that, but give you a few concrete methods of doing analysis. I like to call it digital detective work, because we're going to look at a framework on why, what you need to do in order to make the most out of the social media data you have. Chances are you probably don't have a data problem in terms of amount of data. You probably have an analysis problem, which is figuring out what's happening. So here's a framework to look at that we're going to talk about. It's cutely named because it's an acronym, and we like acronyms because, well, we do. In all forms of marketing analytics, we have to take 4 steps. We need to get the data, and presumably you have access to data. If you want to follow along in this section of the workshop, by the way, you probably want to have Google Analytics access. If you have it, you'll probably want some social network access to data, like Facebook Insights or something along those lines. If you don't have that, that's okay. We're going to record a video of the session, which is that thing there, so you'll be able to watch the video later. So 4 layers of analysis of data processing. There's the data itself. Data obviously should be clean. It should be compatible, meaning that you can work with it in a common program, and it should be coherent. But that's just the start. A lot of the time what we talk about when we're talking about social media analysis is we're actually talking about puking. We are talking about throwing up data onto people and hoping that they can make sense of it. The reality is we're really bad at that as human beings. The second layer of this framework is analysis. This is to answer the question of what happened. So I can show you a whole bunch of numbers, but it doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you a story. So we're going to look at some analysis methods to figure out what happened in your data. The third layer is called insight. Insight is about why something happened. And here's the thing about insight. Very often, you're not going to use data analysis tools to get insight, because what's happened is outside of that. What's happened is there's some other factor, so you need to talk to people, which I know for introverted nerds like me is uncomfortable. I don't like human beings in general. But you have to ask why. Why do you see this trend? What were you doing as a company, as a brand, as a social media manager, as a marketer that caused this? And if you don't know why, you need to do your homework. And then the last section is strategy, which is what do we do next? Okay, so we know what happened, we know why, what are we going to do about it? Why is analysis important? Analysis is important because we're good at basic data analysis. Like, you can pretty much figure out what the trend is here, right? It gets harder when we start getting into more and more and more data. If I were to, in fact, I'm going to go back now. How many people, just by looking at that slide, could tell me what the trend was? Okay, sure.
Oh, like I was just thinking like X equals Y, just going up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody else had their hand up? No, that's fine. It was kind of a trick question because that was an enormous amount of data to try and process just by looking at it quickly. We can't do it as human beings. We're not good at it.
That one.
Yeah, this one is. It's not really. This is not really human friendly, right? No. So we need to answer what happened and why. Like I said, it's all about detective work. I sense a few folks. And what next? When you are talking to stakeholders, they are going to ask you for reporting. They're going to ask you for analysis. They're going to ask you for insight. We think they're asking for this. They're really asking for that way up there. Here's a fun tip from Avinash Kaushik, who writes the Occam's Razor blog. Says, incidentally, the higher up you go on the org chart, the less data you're giving. Right? The higher you go up on the org chart, the more explanation and context and analysis and feedback and what to do in strategy, the less charts there will be. From there, you need to, I want to take a moment to say strategy is probably the most misunderstood term in all of marketing. What we think of as strategy very often is, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. The best explanation of strategy I've ever heard was by a guy named David Robb, who I believe is formerly a forester. He said strategy equals methods plus goals. That's it. If you are talking about social media strategy and you don't have a method and a goal, you're not talking about a strategy, you're talking about something else. Another way we like to put it is strategy is kind of like the menu. Right? You have to decide what you're going to serve. Right? What dishes go together? Because if you think about everything that's in your social toolkit, right? You've got the social media equivalent of pot roasts and nachos and snacks and cheesecake. If you just kind of fling it all on the table, what kind of meal are you going to serve? Probably, unless you're a country buffet. But assuming you're not a country buffet, you want to have some coherence to your strategy, right? So strategy is the menu. Your tactics are the cookbook. Again, if you're trying to explain this to people who work for you in your department, this is a key and critical distinction. If you don't have this distinction, they're just going to keep throwing tactics out, hoping it sounds like a strategy, and eventually, maybe they'll get it right. So you've got to do the work once you've decided your strategy and your tactics, and then measure it. So let's get into actually doing stuff, because doing stuff is more fun than talking about stuff. The first and most important tool that you should be aware of is visualization. And this is a fancy word for drawing pictures. Because we're really, really bad at understanding data. So here's what I'd like you to do. Go to your Google Analytics if you have it. If you don't have it, just pretend you do. Wave your fingers in front of you. Make this a little bit bigger so everyone can see it. Let's look at August from August to now in your data. And because we're talking about social media, I should actually ask, is everyone here relatively familiar with Google Analytics, or any folks who are not familiar with it or something like it? Okay, good. For today's exercise, let's do Facebook. So we're going to make a new segment, and we're going to call it Facebook. What we want to look at today is, I'm going to use Facebook as an example. You can do this with any social channel. You can lump all the data in together into one massive social network. That's fine. I'm going to choose Facebook, and I'm going to take the condition, and I want my source, or medium, to contain, actually I'm going to match the regular expression, Facebook. And if you've been around for a while, you know that Facebook has a mobile domain, fb.me. So I'm going to put a pipe, which is that horizontal, that vertical slash, fb.me. If you're following along, hit save. And now I've got just the Facebook portion of my traffic on my website. So this is just Facebook alone. By the way, when it comes to social media analytics, in a lot of cases, Google Analytics is going to do like 80% of the job for you. You don't necessarily need to buy $1 million worth of tools when you can just dig around in here and make the tool do what you want. So, from here we want to export the data. This visualization is kind of useful, right? Everybody and their cousin should be able to do a simple line chart in Excel. So if you're following along, go ahead and chart this out. Visualization gives you the ability to start looking at your data, to understand what's going on. Now the next thing we want to do, the next method analysis, this is okay, but there's a lot of variability. There's a lot of ups and downs. Can I tell realistically if I'm doing better or worse in social media from this chart? It's tough. So what we want to do next is figure out sort of an average, just kind of smooth stuff out. My personal website is mostly a B2B crowd. Some of your sites may be B2C crowds. You may have very different things, but you want to look at maybe like a 7-day moving average. What this means is that out of this data, you want to do an average that moves along every 7 days. It's going to smooth out chunks of the data and make it a little bit easier to understand. So here's how you do it. Let's go to 150% so we don't go blind. I'll just call it 7-day average. I'm going to go down to day number 7. type the word average. And I'm going to select the previous 7 days. If you're in Excel head, just double click on the box to make it populate the rest. Now, do the exact same chart. Now the green line is our 7-day average. It tells me a little bit more about what's happening in general, right? I can see I've smoothed out some of the swings. There's still some pretty big spikes in there, but I've smoothed stuff out. So the daily volatility is gone. If I want to get even bigger, I'll look at the 30-day moving average and do the exact same thing. My green line is what I want to pay attention to. That's my 30-day average. That tells me, you know what? I'm not doing too well with the social media thing. I mean, I'm kind of doing okay with it, but I hit a high point and now it's kind of on the decline. This tells me maybe I'm not so good at social media. Moving averages, though, have an extra little secret to them that can give you some analysis and some ideas about what to do next. Let's take away the blue line so that it's easier to see. A short-term moving average tells you about what's happened recently. A longer-term moving average tells you what's happening in general. When the two of them cross, it means your momentum has changed. So take a look here at the red line. There's a short-term average. When it's above my long-term moving average, that means that whatever it is I'm talking about is growing, right? So we want the red on top of me, I'm growing, because I'm growing faster in the short term than I'm in the longer term. Does that make sense? When they cross back over, when I fall below that line, now I'm shrinking. My short-term average is shorter than my long-term average. So this is a method for gaining an analysis and insight. Okay, here, if I'm going above the line, whatever I'm doing during that period of time is working. I've got momentum, I've got upward momentum. I should see everything that comes down the funnel. So I've got website traffic, obviously that comes, if you're B2B or even B2C, that's lead gen, opportunities and sales all the way down the funnel. But if my short-term average falls below my long-term average, I'm losing momentum. I'm going to have less traffic down here, which means less stuff down the road. This gives you the ability, as a marketer, to be able to red flag something going on in your social media program or any digital program and say, look, we are about to cross over our averages. It's called a convergence. We're about to cross over here. This is a problem. This means that we need to bring something back from our bucket of tricks, right? Maybe we need to run some paid ads. Maybe we need to put out an infographic. Maybe we need to have a silly video or put Kim Kardashian half naked on the cover of our magazine. Sorry, too soon? But it means that you can intercept and stop a gap in traffic before it starts to significantly impact your revenue, because down here, when you're in the doldrums here, you know whatever your sales cycle is, 10 days, 20 days, 150 days, whatever your sales cycle is, if you've got a gap in traffic here, you're going to see that downstream. You'll be able to say, hey, in 150 days, we're going to have a lead gen problem, we're going to have a sales closing problem. But by seeing the convergence with your averages first, you'll be able to stop it, hopefully. You'll be able to pull something off the back burner and express it to change that momentum on behalf of your company. If you're doing this with, say, Twitter, maybe it's tweet more, right? Or maybe run some promoter tweets. But whatever it is, use this to stop problems before they become serious. Because if you can't see this, you're not going to know that there's a problem until much, much later, until it shows up in your marketing automation system or your sales CRM. And by then, you're going to get yelled at. I don't like getting yelled at personally, so I'd rather stop the problem before it starts. Any questions on how moving averages work? Okay. The next topic I want to move to is what I call derivatives. Not the calculus version, but simply a way of gauging how much something has changed. Imagine we're talking about a map or a GPS, right? So you have your position, you're here on the map, and then you're here on the map from point A to point B. Position is your data. Right, so in your charts here you had, this is your position, 32 visits on the 21st of August, 8 visits on the 29th of August. If you do a difference between these two, a percentage change, you'll have a sense of what you call velocity, right? If it takes you a day to travel from here to here, your speed can be measured in X miles per day. So, new minus old divided by old is your percentage change. That is velocity. Tells you how fast you are going. Velocity is important because, again, if you are trying to get your program moving, you want an increasing velocity. How would you figure that out? Let's move this to a new sheet here so that we can get some clarity. Change equals new minus old divided by old. Drag it down and turn it to a percentage. I love those divided by zeros. Go back and we're going to visualize this as a column chart. And now I have a sense of just how fast things are moving. Sometimes I'm moving really, really, really fast. Most of the time, I'm not really moving all that fast, right? I'm kind of going a little slow. If you know what your editorial calendar is, if you know what your sales cycle is, if you know when you need to hit your numbers, then this will tell you if you are going at the right speed. If your velocity is slow when you need to be going fast, you need to make a correction in your marketing program right away. If your velocity is fast and you know that nobody's, for example, like if you were to do this amount of Facebook activity on your website on December 26th and you're not a retailer, you're probably wasting your time, right? Because unless you're a retailer, people are probably not going to be buying your services. Like they're probably not going to buy a Gulfstream airplane on the 26th. Maybe. But having this ability to chart your velocity gives you insight. It tells you what you should be doing and whether you're doing the right thing or not. So what if you were to do this same equation again to your velocity? That becomes acceleration, or how hard you can step on the gas, or the brakes, as it were. Generally, as marketers, we're concerned about how hard you can hit the gas. Because if you cannot consistently make your car go much faster when you need it to, then when you have an important campaign, you either know you need a long ramp-up time to get your campaigns to be working, or you need to change tactics. So, let's do that. Here is our change of change. Same exact thing. New minus old divided by the old. Make that go away for right now. I'm going to try this out. What do I see here? Above the line in the positive zone, it seems that on my personal website, using my personal Facebook capabilities, I'm not really good at getting to hit the brakes, hit the accelerator really, really fast, right? I've only got a couple of instances where I can really hit the gas, and most of the time, and there are actually some pretty dramatic slowdowns, most of the time not much is happening, so I know that I do not have the ability to accelerate quickly when it comes to Facebook. It is not within my marketing toolkit. It's something that it's just not working for me. So now, when I go to, if this were a company, it's not just my personal website, but if this were a company, I would have to go to my CMO and say, look, we need to change things up because Facebook, we don't have the capability to make it work for us. Maybe other companies do, we don't, because we cannot hit the gas when we need it to. We cannot get up to speed quick enough to hit our objectives. Or just be content with the fact that most of the time not much is going to happen. Has anyone, I'm curious, has anyone actually been trying this like alongside with your own data? How's it been looking for you?
Not good.
Not good? Yeah, welcome to the club. So that, yeah, these are derivatives. Again, this is not super complicated math, and we are not using anything other than the spreadsheet software you already have. You can't do big data if you can't do small data first. Right? If you can't swim in the kiddie pool, do not attempt to cross the Atlantic Ocean. It will end badly. So these techniques are going to help you figure out what's going to work first, just in your surface data. Any computer programmer, any developer can take any of these techniques and work them into your business intelligence system or your dashboarding system, whatever. If they know what they're doing, they can do this, but you have to be able to look and know what to ask first. Here's another popular question. Do Facebook likes mean anything? Just a show of hands. Do Facebook likes have any meaning to you in your marketing program? Yes? Raise your hand. No? Raise your hand. Okay. I'm not sure. Raise your hand. Okay. How would we go about proving this, or disproving this, or figuring out, even starting to hint at this? Let's go to Facebook. Go to your Insights page if you have a formal page. Again, I'm going to use my page. I'm going to export my data. And just to make sure we're doing apples to apples, we're going to do from August 1st to today. And I'm just going to spit that out.
Sorry. So this data set is the page likes?
Yes, these are the page likes. I'm just curious to see if page likes have any meaning whatsoever. So, here's my daily new likes. These are the number of new likes I've gotten every day. I'm going to select from August to November. And let's delete all this stuff, get some room here. What we want to do is see, is there a correlation between likes and the traffic I'm getting from my website. Excel actually has a moderately good correlation function built into it. It's a Pearson correlation for those who are statistically inclined. So if you are looking for something that is not Pearson, this will not do it. But we're going to do correlation between our website traffic and our likes. Correlation numbers run between a -1, which means a negative correlation. For every one change upwards in one variable, the other variable goes down by 1, or by a proportional amount. Positive correlation is for every time one factor goes up, the other factor goes up by an equal amount. Zero correlation, or very close to zero, means that there is no relationship between the two. Now it's important, Statistics 101, everyone will tell you causation and correlation are not the same thing, right? Just because something is correlated does not mean that there's a causal factor. The amount of people who drown and the amount of people who eat ice cream are an almost perfect correlation, but the ice cream does not cause drowning. Ice cream and drowning happen because of summertime. So there's a causation that's separate from the correlation. But in this case, my correlation is at a slight negative, 0.0036. Okay, this is small. This is at fairly close to 0, which means that for likes on my page compared to the traffic sending, there really isn't a relationship. There's not an association. So for me, for my business, there isn't an association. I probably can't prove causation. So should I be chasing likes? Probably not. Now, if you look at all the data that Facebook gives you in their little spreadsheet, which actually is not so little, they give you a massive number of statistics. So what you could do is run a correlation again between your website and all these different statistics to see if there is something that matches up, if there is some kind of linkage that you could then go and try to prove causation. So let's say, as an example, that the number of people who you reached by paid reach on Facebook correlated strongly to sessions. You could then say, okay, we have a correlation, an association. What could we do to test that? Well, let's pay some more, pay a little bit differently. If you're doing $5 a day on promoted posts, now do 10 and see if it increases by the same amount. So that's how you would start to establish these relationships between these two things. Correlation is the first step to understanding whether there is a relationship. Any questions so far? Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, all right, I have some questions about the Facebook
Yeah.
side. So in the statistics that they're giving you there, they're giving you reach. Is reach a factor of how much you're posting? So I guess what you're actually posting and whether people are interacting and engaging with that.
So Facebook actually does a pretty decent job of defining all this stuff right in the top of their column. It says it's the number of people who have seen any content associated with your page. So that could mean stuff that you posted and they saw, or it could mean when somebody shares your content off your Facebook page, somebody else has seen the share. So you may not have read Paper Mag with the Kim Kardashian article, but you probably saw somebody share it, right? So that has gotten reach. Even if you were operating their page, you would not have posted to that person per se.
Okay. And so, but the post has to exist for it to
Yes.
get shared.
Yes.
So it's probably not directly related to the number of daily likes that you have, but more related to the post content.
Right, so you could actually run, like I said, you can run this versus any of the data that Facebook gives you. For that matter, you can run it for any of the data Twitter gives you, or LinkedIn gives you, or Google Plus gives you. Anything that you're getting social data for, you can run these methods on. So this is, we're using Facebook as the example today, but this is a wide open field. Anything you're doing on social, like with Pinterest, Pinterest gives you data downloads, right? They have website analytics and data downloads. If Pinterest is of importance to you, plug it, download the data, stick it in here, and run all these tests that we've been doing today to see what you can pull out of it, and to see whether Pinterest is actually working for you or not. If you're on Twitter, Twitter has the ability to integrate with your website and tell you how many Twitter visitors came to your website. So again, pull that data out of there and bring it in here. If you're using a mobile app, you've got a mobile app for your company, again, you can take stats from your mobile app and plug them into the rest of your marketing numbers to see what's happening here.
I have one.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
So it sounds like you're just recommending to actually look and see which one correlates best for your individual site, but in general, are there measurements from Facebook or from other social networks that you find typically correlate well with the traffic?
It wildly varies, because different companies have completely different models when it comes to social media. So there's a retail chain that I work with where Facebook is their thing, because they post all sorts of cool tips and cooking instructions and all this stuff, and it's amazing the amount of engagement they get. When there's a different client I work with that sells network appliances, the big iron. Facebook doesn't do squat for them. They can do correlation until they turn blue. They're never going to see any return on Facebook because their audience just isn't there. You have a question?
Yeah. So in your example, you're moving people from Facebook to your website.
Yes.
Right? It's all online. What if you're moving people offline? How would you measure that? You would look at sales figures then?
Really good question. So measuring offline is something that you have to do usually with surveying. So you would do a representative sample survey of the population in your target area. So let's say you operated all the McDonald's or all the Burger Kings or all the Starbucks in Massachusetts, right? You would then have to survey and say, have you heard of what's the new latte? Caramel Sea Crunch Unicorn Latte. You say, have you heard of this, and what's your intent to purchase this? And run a continuous survey in geography. And then as you do stuff on social, look for correlation and change. So we did a massive outreach, and you saw a 5% spike in the amount of engagement. Does that translate into a 5% awareness of an intent to purchase? And if that doesn't go up, then you've got a problem. Sales. For B2C transactional sales is not a bad figure because, again, if you're going to run a campaign to buy a pack of gum is not a high-risk transaction, right? If I don't like it, I fling it in the trash. I can't do that with the car. I shouldn't do that with the car. I can't afford to do that with the car. And when you have the bigger the risk of the transaction, the more likely is the transaction is going to break down between point A and point B. There's an analogy I like to use. Imagine that you have a grandma, grandpa, and a little girl who run an apple stand and sell apple pie, or I guess this time of year it'd be turkeys. Grandpa raises the turkeys, right? Grandma harvests the turkeys, and then the little girl sells prepackaged turkeys at the roadside stand. I would hope you would not hold the grandfather responsible for the little girl's sales, because she's probably playing, Candy Crush on her iPhone and ignoring all the customers, right? You would assess the grandfather on his ability to crank out turkeys that people actually want. If he grows a turkey this big, nobody wants that. Right? You want a turkey like this big. So it's kind of what kind of transaction are you talking about? So sales can break down, because I used to work for a company where we had terrific audience creation. We had terrific lead generation. We had salespeople who were kind of like the Glengarry Glen Ross guys, right? You know, the leads are weak. No, you're weak.
Coffees were closers.
The coffees were closers, and then we didn't have any. So we had no coffee. So that's an example where sales would not be a good benchmark for stuff that's significantly up funnel.
The reason I was wondering is because that kind of data comes to you just regularly. You know, you get sales data, retail data.
Yep.
For survey, you have to go out and actually do it.
Yes, exactly. And sales data will help you measure the impact of the previous step. So if you have demand gen and a strong lead gen and a nurturing program, it will help you measure the effectiveness of that. The lead program is what you would use to measure the audience program, but you can't go from sales all the way up to audience. It doesn't work. The last thing I want to end with today is what social media metrics you should be reporting on. There's 3 layers that help you tell a story, because all this data by itself is fine, but it's kind of in isolation. It doesn't tell a story. The first is audience growth. Yes, followers and likes and fans by themselves are not necessarily of value, but they are the first directional indicator you have. Right? If no one is following you, no one is liking you, everything down funnel is probably not going to happen. So this is the first. This is step 1. Step 2 is engagement. Engagement you measure in 3 different ways. People talking to you, conversations, right? People amplifying you by sharing your stuff. And finally, people voting for you. Likes, +1s, favorites on Twitter, pins on Pinterest, right? These numbers together constitute engagement. And the third is a down funnel metric that matters to you. If you're in online, it's probably website traffic. If you're offline, it's feet in the door. And I mean this in all seriousness. If you have a retail situation and you don't have door counters counting the number of people who walk in and out of your store every day, install them. They're like dirt cheap these days, and they're super important because they're telling you how many people are physically walking in the store. Even if you don't buy a thing, at least your marketing did the job of getting them to walk in the store. This is the digital equivalent. People showed up at the website. They may not have bought anything. They may have left the moment they got there, but at least you know you got them there. This is a framework for measuring social. What story tell? We got to people. We got people to talk to us, and we got them to at least engage with us a little bit in something that connects to the marketing funnel. Yes?
When you're talking about online, what's the difference between audience growth and website traffic?
Audience growth is a social audience growth. Likes, fans, followers on Twitter, stuff like that. They're not on your website. They're on your social channels.
Gotcha.
I just have a question with website traffic. I don't disagree with you. However, the challenge is, as marketers, as we know, is with attribution, it's so complicated, right? So we could post something on Facebook or Twitter and gets a ton of engagement based on those KPIs that you're outlining in step number 2. However, they may not go to the site right then and there. And so sometimes what happens is when you go back and look at the web analytics, it says, oh, well, your social traffic was maybe 1%. And then your web analytics team is telling you, oh, well, social didn't really do its job. But we know as social marketers, well, that's actually not the case. Because we know the customer journey is very complex, right? They may see something on social, they may not go to the site right then and there. So I guess I take website traffic with a grain of salt just because of the complexities of that user journey and attribution.
That is an excellent question. It is an excellent point. The way you answer that is with what is called assisted conversions. So popular web analytics tools, Omniture does this, whatever Adobe calls it these days, I don't even know what they call it now. Google Analytics does what's called multi-channel funnels. What they do is they say, we know that the customer journey is more like a drunken run through a maze than it is a linear funnel. So we will say that social, did a few conversions, right? But it was a participant in many more conversions somewhere in the journey, even if it was the last thing somebody did. And you will see this in your own analytics. And the nice thing about Google Analytics is if you stuck your values in for what constitutes a conversion digitally, it'll then try to assess a value for it. So in this case, if I spent $100,000 on social media in time and labor, and my direct last touch was $82,000, you think, well, I think it's probably time that we fired the social guy and get somebody different, or just stop doing social. But there's an additional $50,000 in assisted value that social helps you to create. Suddenly you went from negative ROI to positive ROI and say, okay, maybe this guy, will give him a bonus, give him an extra pair of shoes. If you look inside of Google Analytics, if you look at what they call the top conversion paths, I'm going to switch this over to source medium because this starts to get hilarious. When you get down into the lower parts of the dungeon here, this person's crazy. They downloaded an ebook, so it was a $1 conversion for us. But they read us on the website. They went and typed in our name directly. They went back to another website we had on earned media. They had some social media here. They searched for us online. They read an article on referral.com here. They left a comment on our blog twice. They did some more stuff here and then some more stuff here. They searched for us again. This finally convinced them to actually download the ebook, right? So you will actually be able to show proof points. Like, here's how convoluted the journey actually gets. It gets ridiculous. You may actually not want this person as a customer because they're going to be a pain in the ass. They'll be returning the product every 3 days. But at least it gives you a sense of just how complex the journey is. Other questions?
Small enough room.
All right.
Say it's a small enough room if we need the microphone.
I don't think we need a microphone. Other questions about any of this stuff? Food coma setting in? All right, well, thank you so much. I want to thank MITX for having me out here today. Yeah.
Oh, no, I was going to clap.
Okay. And I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.